All right, welcome back to First Gen Wealth. I'm Jim Woodworth, your host for now anyway, while Randy continues to focus on his health. And excited to be once again joined. I was not hosting the last time you were here, but Mr. Nick Pidek, our city council member and local business owner. Welcome, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I do want to talk about some of your business stuff,
Okay.
Because obviously, you've been an integral part of revitalizing our downtown with some businesses you've created and some projects you've been a part of. But I do want to shift gears a little bit and talk about your city council, some of your time on city council, and your motivation to run again and then now run again. This would be your third term, correct?
Yeah.
So I think we're at a time locally where this city council election is super, super important. We have a lot of people running, a lot of new people that are interested in our city government. And so I just kind of want to get your motivation of what kind of initially pushed you in that direction and quite frankly, why are you putting yourself through it again?
Putting yourself through
Yeah.
it. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is most people's story of when they come to council for the first time. My story was I got a call on a Wednesday night from one of my staff members that was like, hey, we just had a consumers person here that said they're closing down the street and tomorrow is National Coffee Day. And I was like, well, get me that guy's number and get me on the phone with the supervisor. So it was like hours of me tracking down the right person to talk to. I finally got on the phone with someone. I was like, hey, you can't close the street down tomorrow. Like, I don't care that you're upgrading the gas lines, but like, I've been planning for National Coffee Day and I can't have our street closed. And traced a plan that was stamped by City Hall to upgrade the infrastructure. No problem with that, but there was just a total lack of communication to business owners and how it would impact their business, their day-to-day operations. And we had other friends and business owners downtown where they'd rip up sidewalks and like they couldn't even get into their building. So it comes at a pain point, frustration,
Mm-hmm.
like, why is this happening? So I wrote a speech. I'd never been to City Hall before, went and was like, hey, who's responsible for this? Like, who's owning the communication? I talked with the consumer side because it's a marriage of both. And then, obviously I went to complain, but then I was like, who's at the helm here? Like who's asking these questions and thinking about, okay, in 7 months from now when this contract is executed, right? Because it doesn't just happen overnight. Who's going to follow up and make sure that people are taken care of? The human side of it is taken care of. And so I was like, well, I can easily complain. I can come, but like, what can I do to contribute to this? And so, that was like my first instigation of coming and seeing it and just like, hey, why don't I put my hat in the ring for this? Because what questions could be asked, thinking about from a business standpoint, our cycles for releasing aren't just like, hey, release a new product tomorrow. It's like planning and thinking and following through. And so I just felt like at the time, City Council could benefit from just having a downtown business owner's perspective. And when I was running, I was the only person, I think, on that ticket. And for several years, the only business owner on council, which I think adds a different dynamic to it.
Oh, yeah.
I think you need a mix of both. And so that's what I felt like I could bring and represent that side of things.
Yeah, well, fast forward now 6 years.
Yep.
This election, or 4 years. 4 years you've been on council.
Yep, 4 years, yep.
And now we have a lot of potential business owners running as candidates.
Yeah.
And there's at least one other business owner that's on council now. So I think, for me, when I'm picking somebody to vote for, I always look at business experience. I want to see that because I think that, just like you said, it's not just some type of stamp that you can do without really thinking about the impact of not only its people, but how does this impact our businesses? This is, our downtown business is something Randy and I have, and you and your wife Mandy have too. That's our focus. Like downtown is our clientele for the most part when it comes to real estate development. So we really need to be thinking about what's in their best interest, and that could be a consumer's project. I know we just had the lampposts that were just all, and similar thing. I think that there was some frustration with some of the communication. It was not nearly as bad as what was envisioned, I think, because I think people were envisioning the whole sidewalk being ripped up, and that didn't happen. So I think overall it was a good thing, and they look great. but really focusing on the end user.
Yeah.
Is that still your focus now that like you had the pain point, you ran on that pain point? Is it a continuation of new pain points that keep you coming back, or why are you running for re-election?
Yeah. So I think there's, sometimes get into a conversation with my mom, and there's always like term limits come up, and that's can be a somewhat hot topic for people. But I think there's a certain level, at least at this local city council level, there's a period of understanding how all this stuff works. Because even, I would say it probably, maybe other council members are different, but like it probably took me a year like of studying every packet, every detail. I mean, we'll get a 130-page packet that delves into the thickness of pavement and the cost of this thing and that thing. And there's so many different things that a city council member is actually responsible for understanding and voting on. And it's easy to get a packet and just vote on stuff without looking through it. Because it requires a lot of time and attention. And so there's a little bit of momentum to just get to a point of like, I understand how these systems work, to understand the city itself, right? Because you have our type of government, which if we took a step back for people who might not know, we have a city manager strong government, which is different than what you might see if like most TV shows having a mayor that's elected, right? And they run to be the mayor. Well, ours is very much you run 7 city council members at any different time, and the city manager runs the city. Like they are the CEO of the city. And council's main responsibility is to oversee the city manager. Like we are the only group of people that can fire the city manager. So there's kind of like, I think about this as the CEO of Foster. If I had a group of 7 people that were making, like ultimately could fire me and remove me from Foster, like that puts me in a position where it's like, hey, I need to make sure that I'm accountable, to that group, to help educate them, to help bring them about to my decisions. So that type of government is really, we're not running the city of the day to day. Like, I don't think under this form of government, it's reasonable to assume that any city council member can devote the amount of time to run the city, because we're two meetings a month, the first and third Mondays, sometimes a fifth meeting on a fifth Monday. But you have to understand as a council member how you can help and how you can push back on things, what you need to understand. So the reason why I'm continuing to run is because I feel like we've built this momentum. I've worked with Nathan Henney, the city manager now, for 4 years, and I got to understand him, and he's a human being like we all are that's got complexities and things he's good at, things he's not good at. We've had some heated discussions. We've had some pleasant discussions and everything in between. And getting to know each other is huge. So I see him as a valuable asset to the city. He's one of the main reasons I ran at the beginning. And because he's still here, he's another reason why I'm continuing to run, is because I think he's a really good leader. And that makes my job a lot easier because I can push back on things that he doesn't necessarily understand. Things that he does understand well, I can let him take the driver's seat and just ask more questions instead of push into them. So there's that dynamic and that balance. So, and my main thing is I really view it in a long-term play, is the seeds that I sow now or started sowing 4 years ago are things that my kids, who are now from 7 to a year and a half old, are going to reap in 20 years. There's things that, like the consumers thing, where you make a decision and 7 months later the project goes through, but the decisions we make now for how the financial stability of our community are going to affect my kids. Like take lead service lines. These are something that we were handed by a state mandate to replace all the said lead service lines. Great. I'm in agreement with that. We don't want to poison people. Sure, let's do that. You make a mandate by the state, but then who pays for that, right? Where do you get the money for that? We're already a strapped community, and now we have this additional responsibility. So those are the complexities with operating, and those are things we have to decide now. So if I just wait till I'm retired and have extra free time, then those decisions, it's already too late.
For your kids, for
it's
sure.
already too late. So so it's both decisions now and in the future why it drives me to keep going back. It's a worthwhile investment for the future generations is the way I view it.
Well, I think like you, and I know, we've talked about this, and I just know you as a business person. And, I think in 2015 we started collaborating on what, how to be involved in different things. So
Yeah.
I've got a good sense for who you are, and it's easy for me to say, yep, I support Nick Pidek. And even though I'm no longer a registered voter in the city of Owosso, like, you have my support, you have our support. Like, we want you on council for those reasons. I think you're in it for the right reasons, and it shows that you're prepared. Like, you read the packet, you ask questions. I've been to a few city council meetings where you are just very intently involved in every meeting. So kudos to you. And I think that for the most part, every candidate feels, and they believe this, and I believe it, that they are in it to provide that better future for the city of Owosso, for our local community. And so I have a lot of respect for all of our council members, regardless of how I may be aligned with their political views, because I know it's like, you guys, it's not a pat on the back type of job. I think from most of your community communication is when something's going wrong. Like you mentioned, the pain points. Like, this really impacted me in a negative way, so I'm reaching out. Like, you're not getting the thank yous because this, it's a thankless job. So I give kudos to all of our council members. However, I feel like at this time more than ever, we really need you to be reelected. We need your leadership and your knowledge, because like you said, there is that learning curve of somebody being new to council, and whatever their agenda is, they want to get that agenda passed like right now, because that's what they're running on. And that may not be the best approach, because you really need to figure out the government side of things just like you did. So shifting gears from politics, and I just want to point out too, it's a nonpartisan position, correct? Like, I don't know if you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever.
It shouldn't matter. It
doesn't matter. And locally, it doesn't matter. Like, Randy and I talk about this all the time. Like, nationally, we have really, really shitty candidates. Locally, we have really, really good people. And locally, you can make such a bigger difference of things that matter compared to all this noise nationally about whatever, that things that don't really impact Owosso. And we spend so much negative energy on things that really don't impact us as a community. But we've got really good people running for council. We've got really good people that are on council. And maybe some council members that need to go. I don't know. But there's always a mix of that. But for the most part, really good people running. So business-wise, you own Foster Coffee.
Yeah.
You and Mandy own Aviator Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And you own the building in West Town. Anything besides rental property here or there? Anything else, like, commercial-wise? Or is that it so far?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, we own 2 buildings downtown. That's kind of houses the Aviator Jane building, the retail store. Yep. And then there's another building that we actually bought from you at 110, which is the Aviator Studio. So a lot of rentals. We do both first floor and second floor rentals. So it's kind of just a branch off of what Mandy's already doing. And then the building we moved into 2 years ago now, back in November, has a different upstairs portion that we're actually renting. So we helped Oak and Ivory get their first start in one of our spaces. Kendra Makeup Studio is in one of our spaces. And then a group of individuals, a really great company, the Madisons, their photography studio that opened up on the second floor of the building that we renovated, where Aviator Jane is. They've been longtime friends of mine and partners of us at Foster Reason for a lot of our photography and video. They've been doing a lot of work with the city of Owosso too. So they've just moved into a studio, and then there's 2 other offices.
And you have Brumley and Bloom.
Yep. Brumley and Bloom moved into where Oak and Ivory is, because Oak and Ivory expanded into another building, and we're super proud of Sydney just continuing to go. And I just love that story. Like, for us, it's like, I remember calling you and Randy up in 2015 saying, and John and I, this comes up on my feed every now and then, of like us sitting in that old building on Exchange and like doing a pitch to you guys, and like Randy, and just like pouring coffee into like a pour over and saying, this was our dream. We want to open a coffee shop. And we were like so nervous about it. Like, what if these guys don't rent to us? And, Brandy tells the story, and he's like, 5 minutes after you got there, I was like, I'll fund this. I'll do whatever you want. That's fine. You know, back in the day where he'd just agree to things without contracts in place. Yeah, it's cool to be now on kind of a different flip side of that, to where people are wanting to start. And we're always trying to think about that from this perspective of like, hey, could you go into this building? Hey, you could go into our West Town space. We helped, now a couple different businesses get started into their first place. And that's really cool to kind of come, 9 years later when we were first starting out, to now we can be in a position to help people kind of take that next leap of, I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to do this. Like, hey, let's think through it and, get you into a spot where you can make an impact on what you love to do in our downtown. Because we want it here in Owosso.
Yeah. Oak and Ivory is a really cool story, because I know that, was it Mandy that basically recruited her and said, hey, you need to do this. And then she's moved, and and I don't know if you've seen it, but she just did a little facade lift.
Yeah, I saw that last night. I was walking.
It looks amazing. And so she's doing incredible things for downtown Owosso, really cool little niche market that she has. But the Aviator Jane space, this is a unique building, because not only did you buy 110 off of us, but you also that's a pain point for you, right?
It's not a pain point, but it's an interesting part of the story, just
so we end up selling that building to somebody else. You're like, dude, like, why didn't you ask me if we wanted to buy it? Like, we would have bought it. And so, but now you have worked out an arrangement with the people that bought that building to basically convert that building. We're talking about where Aviator Jane is now, and the pharmacy next to it. That's actually all one building.
Yeah, it's an interesting parcel.
Yeah, so it's an interesting parcel, but it's easily divisible.
Yeah.
There's very clear property lines inside of the building, I guess you could say. Yeah. The basement all the way up. And you're turning it into a condo, essentially. Is that the plan?
Yeah,
still?
So the owner of the building went through the condo association, did all the legal work, the architectural work, to make it a condo, just for the simplicity of how you splice it up. And so we basically been leasing our portion until we bought it, and then subleasing to some of the other tenants there too.
Yeah. So you're subleasing to Kendra, to Brum and Bloom, and you're in the process of purchasing that from.
Yeah, I mean, like, we started the bank conversations back in February. I mean, you can look at it now and say it's like super frustrating. We were going through 504 SBA loans, a vehicle for buying commercial property with the help of the federal government, backing part of the loan. And it just was a complicated deal. We had to go through evaluation of the building, and then phase 1, and we had to do a phase 2 on it, which is just environmental testing, which is just a racket, I think. But obviously it
for a building like that, yeah, it's a racket.
Yeah, but the dry cleaner across the street, and there's certain stuff in the soil, and it's good to at least know here's the chemical content in the soil prior to us. Like, we had nothing to do with that, but they're old buildings, and for people who don't understand that, it's just a way for banks and them to kind of just say, we don't own any of the chemicals in the ground, but we know that they're there, so then we can hold Nick and Mandy not liable for it. So it does protect us. I get it. So we're in the process now of closing, but because interest rates came down, like, it affects our interest rate on the loan. So we're at least excited. It took so long, but now we're in the right. Final stretch.
So I just think that's unique, because it's a building that's, I wouldn't say it's unlike any other commercial building downtown Owosso, but because we could easily do the same thing with Foster and now Sakura. It's one building, but two tenants. But the way that you've turned it into a condo, to where now you can purchase that half of the building, where before that was not an option. So I think when people look at, potential real estate deals, there's so many different angles that one can pursue a property.
Yeah.
And just because it's that way today does not necessarily mean that that's the way it's got to be forever. Yeah. Whether that's through, construction and redevelopment, or now zoning, because basically taking this parcel and splitting it into two, and turning it into a condo. So, so the pharmacy really wants to just focus on being the pharmacy.
Yeah.
They don't want to be landlords. And I know when we sold them the building, they'd mentioned that, they don't want to be landlords and have to manage this huge property when they're a pharmacy and they want to just do what they do.
Yeah.
So super unique. And it's great for you guys. I think it's going to be great for the community. You guys, have already made significant improvements to that building. Has the overall business of Aviator Jane grown since taking on that bigger space, or how, give me a sense of, where you guys are at, what's next for that, portion of what you and Mandy are are doing?
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. I mean, I think about when you're talking about like creative ways, like whenever we approach an idea, whether it's a building or starting a business or whatever, it's like you have 20 ideas and 19 of them don't work. Like they don't end up that way, you know? So it's like, it's always a matter of just figuring out what works in that moment. And you go down this rabbit hole, and like that doesn't work out. And then you try another one. And I think very much with Aviator Jane, that has been kind of the transformation with Mandy and the business. We've seen a transition into doing some more consignment stuff because we have a larger footprint of square footage. You know, we can certainly put products in there and fill it. But what we're also finding is some people who don't want to have the overhead of a building and a lease and all of those contractual obligations can actually do commission-based. So we have 4 commission-based people in the store. So they're tagged like Aviator Jane. There's a business called Found Cottage, which is over in the Granville area by Grand Rapids, that does a model like this. It's not unique to them or to Aviator Jane. But we're seeing that happen. It just kind of sparked with one. Mandy was actually going to Frankenmuth and met this girl at an antique shop she was in, and sparked up a conversation. Was like, hey, if you ever want to come, and like we're thinking about doing that. And she's like, I don't know, I'm kind of burned out on it. And Mandy got around to doing it and reached back out to her, and she's been like crushing it. And she just does amazing stuff through Mandy's space, and she's just a phenomenal woman. And so that's starting to grow. And then we have these kind of underutilized spaces that you could consider in back of house or just storage that we're continuing to convert into spaces that people can rent. So Mandy just did a post about, hey, would you ever be interested in consignment? We're thinking about this. What would you like us to do with this room? And she's just had so many people reach out like, I would have a booth. Which that building has a lot of history of booths.
Yes,
it was like the Treasures Antique Shop and then Cowboy and his whole thing.
Yeah.
It's been through the ringer on consignment and just booths, but Mandy's exploring a different kind of more curated approach as she's done with consignment. You just can't bring anything in there because she also understands her customers and her clientele. Like, hey, I don't want them to have to sift through 20 like porcelain dolls that scare you to get to like a gold coin that you want. Like that's not what she's doing. She's like, hey, these are pieces that fit in style and thematically. So she's being really selective about that and finding people who shared that vision of Aviator Jane, that it's congruent with her vision to help people with their home and make a sense of home. So it's all kind of consistent there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she has an incredible eye for products and ideas, I think. So you wouldn't know going in that you have basically different vendors that are using some of that space. Yeah. It's because when I look at it, I'm like, this is all Mandy's vision of, she's done projects for me that have turned out incredibly well. So, I kind of just see everywhere in the store, I feel like it's Mandy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Are you guys, for the most part, are you, because obviously you guys own Foster Coffee with John, and then Aviator Jane. Are you pretty much not involved with Aviator Jane and focusing on Foster and vice versa? Mandy is just Aviator Jane. Or you guys, is your dinner conversations, how do we grow this area of Foster and how do we grow? Are you guys involved in each other's businesses?
Yeah. So I'm 100% her furniture mover. Yeah. So I work full time as a furniture mover. We moved some pieces on Saturday. She had somebody had bought one, and we ended up delivering it to the DeWitt area. But yeah, I mean, she really runs that. I'm a really supportive role because she has such a great vision for it. I feel like where my strength with anything is like the business and strategy and vision side. I'm not so great on the day-to-day stuff, knowing that about myself, which is why Foster works so well, is because we have such a phenomenal team that runs this stuff day to day, and is really carrying a lot of the weight, and we can vision cast together. So I can do that a little bit with Aviator Jane, but really I feel like my role is handyman to fix things up. I mean, I'm laying floor, fixing light bulbs, moving furniture, whatever she wants me to do, I do. But then we have a process just as a family, because we kind of think about our relationship as a couple, and then our relationship with our kids, and then outflowing from that, all the other business things in that order of importance. And so every year we do kind of a deep dive into like, what do we want out of these things? Where are we going in this? So things are not with the business, whether it's Aviator Jane or Foster, we try to make them not as accidental as possible. Like it happens, that we think about what do we want to do and what would this impact would this have? So even the expansion was planning and thinking and praying and just talking through what do we want to accomplish with Aviator Jane, and then what's her role, what's my role, what do you need for this for me? And, we can kind of strategize to say, okay, if you're expanding here, like when we were getting the building and we had this upstairs office, we could think through, okay, here's what I can do. Like I can do the flooring and, some of the light work and all that. You will handle the painting because I hate that. And then just work together to make it come together, and then she can style it. So yeah, there's a lot of strategy that goes on, but she's also has a great team, and Allie and Selena there. And we've had a lot of really great people that have worked for us for the year, throughout the years, that just make it work. And I mean, I think you probably know this too, with just the company you run, is that like, I know the CEOs and like kind of be the face of the company, but like there's so many amazing people behind those people that don't get to be on podcasts, and get in the headlines, I think really make a business. And so for me, it's like anything, the success of Aviator or Foster is just really the teams that we've cultivated, and certainly Mandy as it regards to leading the charge at Aviator.
Yeah, you do have a great team at Foster. I go in there a lot more than I go in Aviator Jane. But that's not, it's, it's for me, it's a social thing. Like I love the baristas. They are, and regardless of how long they've been there or who they are very, very personable, and they take so much time and effort into learning everybody's names. It's impressive. I don't know if you guys have flashcards behind the scenes, or like the second time I meet somebody, they already know my name, and it's a pretty cool, just a really good vibe that you've created there. So,
yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So, I want to just wrap up by just acknowledging the fact that you guys do these yearly deep dives, and whatever decision-making process it is as a family for you to devote a piece of your time to city council. Thank you, because it is, like I said, a thankless job, except right now. I want to publicly, nationally, worldwide thank you for everything you do for our city, not just on council, but as a business owner and community leader. So we appreciate you.
Yeah,
and
thanks,
good luck. Good luck this November.
Yeah,
I hope you're back.
November 5th. Remember, Nick in November.
Nick in November. And if you have any questions, or you want my take on who else might be a great candidate for city council, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm not a registered voter, but I do have an opinion. So, so with that, I just want to thank you all for listening, and hopefully next time when you tune in, Randy will be sitting here next to me. No offense to Nick, he was great, but I love my bro. So
yeah.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick before we stop, why don't you can you give a quick update on Randy? That's probably the number one question I get. Is he not? Does he have anything to report?
Sure.
Someone just throw in the episode.
Sure. Yeah.
Just like before we had the episode.
Yeah. Yep. So before we end, I just want to give a quick update on my brother. So one of the things that the main thing he's been praying for since he's diagnosed with cancer was the ability to have surgery, and to have somebody, from a surgeon, have faith in that process. So those prayers have been answered. So Randy has surgery scheduled for November 7th. It's high risk, high reward. So we need all the prayers we can get in regards to the removal of his cancer on November 7th. And we're excited about it. We're nervous about it. But that is where we're at right now in the process. So Randy will stop chemo somewhere on or before October 13th. And then we've got almost 30 days of being chemo-free, going into surgery where he'll be at his strongest. That's the plan. And we're just praying for a very successful surgery. So keep him in your prayers. We appreciate it.